Hey, brother, hear me now. Brother, dog. Know me, understand.
Welcome to the Sargassum Podcast. My name's Robbie Thigpen.
I'm Francisca Elmer.
And I am Mar Fernandez, and we are your hosts for today. We're gonna share with you the latest ideas and solutions about sargassum, which has become an international challenge.
Well, good morning, everybody, or afternoon, or whatever it is, wherever you are, since we're scattered across the planet. How's y'all's week been going?
Everything fine here in northern Germany. Still lots of snow and still lots of plans to go to the Caribbean as soon as we're allowed to.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
How about you, Francisca? How's your torturous trip in paradise?
Oh, it's very torturous. There's lots and lots of sargassum on the beach. So I get to see it every day almost. And I got to go visit the sargassum house the other day. I didn't get to go very close, but I got to see where it is, and it's in a little plant nursery in Puerto Morelos, and it's really nice looking.
So today we got a gentleman with us from Little Fort Lauderdale or something like that down in Florida in the U.S. and he's apparently a renowned photographer, perhaps a world-renowned photographer, at least in Malaysia and the Sea of Japan and the Caribbean and a few other places here and there. And his name's Mr. Goog, or actually his name's Chris Goog, but we're going to call him Goog today because everybody's called Chris and nobody's called Goog. So that's how we're going to talk to him. And but he's does some amazing stuff with sargassum, and we're going to talk to him about that today. And I'm going to go ahead and open up with our first question. Goog, would you tell us what sargassum means to you?
Well, what it means to me is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for me to find another photographically beautiful element within my artwork. I'm always looking for a background that has to go in addition to a foreground. And that beautiful light green color, slight tan color, and light rays cutting down through it, it's an artistic opportunity that allows for me to make something beautiful where there wasn't anything beautiful before. But at the same time, even though I'm not a scientist, I've got the inner geek bug that after I make that beauty, I can't help but to pick through it and look for the coolest, tiniest creatures, from frogfish to filefish to invertebrates. So I love that little Easter egg treasure hunt.
Nice.
So awesome.
Before we get into the nuts and bolts of some of the other stuff, tell us a little bit about the type of camera equipment you use.
Yeah, so the camera itself is actually a camera that most people would be familiar with. Just a regular SLR camera inside of an underwater housing. Now you take a 2 or 3 pound SLR camera and you put it in a 45-pound underwater housing, and it becomes ridiculously unwieldy. So I need Sherpas everywhere I go just to get the camera to the water. But once the camera's underwater, it's a huge two-handed system, but it's actually quite lightweight underwater. Very modular, so it'll always look different every time I've got it, depending on my objective.
Excellent. One thing I should have said, because we heard a little bit of background noise, that you're coming to us today from your studio in Fort Lauderdale. And
Yes.
that's what all those pretty images. We may have a little bit of pieces of just slight disturbances from time to time, but we're going to deal with that as we move forward. So thanks for being here. And Marv, you got something you want to talk about?
Of course, I wanted to ask, how was the path to becoming an underwater world-known photographer? Like, how did that happen? Was this something that you always wanted to do, or it just happened on the way?
I think I'm very, very lucky in that I found my calling very early in life. I've been a full-time professional underwater photographer since I was 15 years old. So I've been at this for pretty much my entire adult life. I don't know why I wasted a year and a half going to college, because my career as an underwater photographer was already going great. And I had no plans to become a doctor or a lawyer or something that requires a degree. So dropping out My only regret in life was not dropping out of college sooner than I did. I highly respect those who earn their PhDs in marine sciences and their advanced degrees. Most of my friends have those degrees, and I love the knowledge, and I love soaking up the knowledge of advanced degrees like a sponge. But for me, being out in the field and being out in the wild is my true calling and my true passion, interacting with the marine life and just trying to make my brain think like the brain of a fish, a turtle, a manatee. These have always been the things that keep me up at 2 a.m. and the things that I think about all day long to try to interact with the animals in such a way that they'll allow me to get a portrait of them made.
Beautiful. I'm thinking now that probably some of us just did a PhD because we were not able to take such amazing photos underwater. We just had to entertain ourselves with something else.
Well, as I like to say, because of such a focused, direct career path, I suck at everything else in life. I can only do one thing.
But you can do it very well.
But you seem to be the expert on that.
I focus
or one of the experts at least.
Yeah, I don't know how to talk about any other topics.
You're very similar to somebody who has a PhD in marine biology or marine ecology then, because that's what we are too. And we literally just went to school so long because we realized that it can keep us underwater.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I love. I love speaking to people who are intimately involved in a particular field of marine science, because I love being able to share my in-person experience with the animals. I look at things from a relatively non-scientific standpoint. I don't have empirical measurements or anything like that. I just observe, watch, and to me, one of the most important things is the behavior of the marine life in the way that it reacts to its surroundings.
Yeah, well, the thing is, science begins with observation. And, you know, and one thing you're doing is you're observing, you're learning from your observations, and you're documenting these observations as well. So that's basic science right there. Yeah. And so like it or not, you are doing science.
Yeah, I think sometimes scientists nowadays tend to forget the actual observation of what they're studying, because we have so many fancy sensors and remote sensing and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes we lack the actual visual and looking at what we are studying. So I think your pictures and your videos are so powerful. I mean, this is what gets people involved and what gets scientists excited. If we don't see what we're studying, we don't even know what we're doing. So it's super valuable.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah, exactly. But moving along, tell me about your favorite animal that you run into out there in messing with the sargassum.
Oh, that's a tough thing. When I'm going out in the ocean, far from shore, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 miles from shore, and I see a mat of sargassum, the thing that gets my heart pumping the most is when I jump off that boat and I have no idea what's going to be under this 50-acre patch of sargassum. My goal is to find an oceanic white-tip shark, a hammerhead shark, something like that. It very, very, very rarely happens. So after I jump in the water and look for something that really makes me excited, and I see none of it, which is more common, I start picking through the sargassum. And depending on the time of year, baby sea turtles are a great find in there. Sargassum frogfish are actually pretty easy to find if you know exactly where to look and how to find them. The filefish, the crabs, and then there's always the mystery thing. Sometimes you get a flash of green and blue off in the distance and you realize it's a few mahi-mahi coming at you. They come in for a quick, close inspection. They're very unafraid, and then they're gone before you know it. And then every once in a while, there's one of the larger oceanic freaks, like a mola mola. They tend to, you know, come and go. You can't predict them. And yeah, flying fish are very often found in the sargassum mats. All sorts of creatures. I don't know if I can pin it down to just one, because to me, it's an exploration of not knowing what I'm going to find, but still knowing how to look for and find all the usual suspects. But it's the one that I didn't expect that makes me the most excited.
Nice. I think maybe another way to look at that is you know, we got a big tradition around here of cooking barbecue. I mean, like whole hogs and stuff, and I'm one of those people that cooks those things. And so people will say, I'll be at somebody else's pig cooking or whatnot. They'll say, well, Robbie, you do a lot of this. What's your favorite barbecue? And I'll just look at them and say, well, usually the one I'm eating right now. And because, you know, it's something new, you don't know what to expect. And that's kind of what you said, you know, this unexpected thing that you're seeing is the best. I empathize with that a lot. Thank you.
You know,
for sharing that.
what you just said right there is an old photographer saying, people are constantly asking photographers, what's the best camera? What should I buy? And the joke we say is, well, the one that's with you. And what that's trying to say is people stop worrying about what new expensive camera to buy. Take the camera that you've got with you and go do something awesome with it. So
Exactly.
for most of us, that means a phone.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, I guess the stuff you really want to see is some sharks and stuff that you haven't seen before out there. And
well, the large creatures that use the sargassum as a temporary habitat or looking for food underneath that sargassum mat. You know, the same applies to floating pallets. I found 18-wheeler containers that have fallen off ships. If you get underneath one of those things, you stand just as good of a chance of finding creatures. But that sargassum mat that covers a huge expanse of ocean is going to have stuff that's lived inside that sargassum mat for weeks, months. As long as the sargassum mat can exist in its form, it's going to continue to grow populations of more and more ocean fish and bring them right to my lens.
Yeah, and it's a nice
Nice.
backdrop as well
Nice.
for the pictures.
Yeah, I love when I'm with another person, when the bubbles of that other person rise up and temporarily split a hole in the mat, and then it closes again right after the bubbles clear.
Nice. So Chris, you
The
also
little
have
things.
some pictures for us to show, right? You prepared some pictures from different animals.
Sure,
you've
I can.
seen.
Sure, and I can talk about, I'm going to turn the camera on my phone around without shutting off the Zoom meeting.
We've heard this story before.
Yeah, right? So just one to start, this is just video footage that's in about 1 meter of water right in my backyard of Lauderdale by the Sea. And it shows the massive schools of minnows that love hanging out under the mats of sargassum. Now, normally they're around South Florida, but they won't come this close. And I can't approach them this closely unless I blend in with the sargassum and basically float in the mat perfectly still.
So you camouflage with the sargassum.
Exactly. It is my cover. And like, this is the reverse view of that. These are just the residential buildings of Lauderdale by the Sea area. And laying in this, it's just great. You see all the creatures coming right up to me. And here's an example of what I was saying about how the diver's bubbles will make the ring up above and let the light rays shine through. It's hard to
Nice.
find other scuba diving friends that will actually want to jump off a boat in the sargassum, though. Everybody wants to go see a coral reef for some reason. So at nighttime, what I do is I jump off a boat in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the night, over, 1,000 feet of water or so. And up towards the surface, you can also find little bits of sargassum drifting around and learn what types of creatures use it. Now, if we look really close, we can see the bryozoan attached to the coral, attached to the sargassum, but we're looking for bigger creatures, the little triggerfish or filefish right there, and the seahorses, triple tails. You can find
Nice.
triple tails almost all the time. Different types of filefish. Now, this isn't the sargassum filefish, but there are lots of filefish that will take part of the sargassum and attach their mouths to it. Flying fish are all over the place. The frogfish are always fun to find, floating right at the surface. Mahi are a common sight. And that's just a post-larval mahi. It's about maybe 3/4 of an inch long. a big adult sargassum frogfish. They're actually surprisingly easy to find. But yeah, I could go on and on and on. If you want to see more, you let me know. But actually, here's an interesting one. I liked this one. Hold on, this one. See there's crabs, little swimming crabs, and there's actually two. They're mating right now during the video footage, wrapped around each other, getting ready to make more. And we can see a huge difference in the color of the sargassum as the season goes on, and as more becomes sinking sargassum as opposed to floating sargassum. And once it starts to sink, lots of foraging happens with the small jacks as they go from pile to pile, picking out all the invertebrates and the small little larval fish that are using the sargassum as shelter. So yeah, as it sinks, you watch the beachgoers start to take on a whole different approach. And I love watching people's reaction to the sargassum. When it comes in the thick mats, of course, they don't want to do their wading in the water with their drinks. But once it starts to sink, a lot more beachgoers tend to come back out and enjoy the shallow waters. But once they step on one of those sunken dead mats, watching them freak out, you think they'd stepped on a stingray.
Oh, I can imagine. And the reason they don't go out when it's floating, they're afraid a big shark's going to swim out from under it and get them.
Absolutely. The amount of fear that happens when they can't see their own feet and they can't see into the water is just unfathomable. I want more people to be able to enjoy it, but yeah, they just can't get over the fear of what they can't see.
But also when the mats are on top, they can sting you quite a lot too. So that may be also a reason why people stop
all those little
in
stinging hydroids.
Yes.
I do tend to wear, even in the middle of summer, I do tend to wear either just a skin or a protective thin suit, just because, 20 or 30 minutes in the sargassum mats, that's tolerable, but except for the sensitive skin. But an hour or two or three really starts to put a hurting on you after a while. It builds up. It's like a cumulative sting, and the rash tends to build up. And when you look at it through a good macro lens, you can actually see the individual hydroids that are growing on it. And it's pretty interesting to see the actual little animals that are causing these stings.
Yes.
So actually, you've spent more time swimming with the sargassum than any scientist recently. So have you observed any changes in the sargassum?
Well, there's definitely a quantity change. I think it's been pretty well documented, the changes in quantity over the last couple of years. But as far as the types of creatures that are under it, no. But what I'm trying to build a better observation of is in the years 2017, 18, and 19, we saw the larger quantities of sargassum. But only in the years 2019 and 20 have I started to see an increase of associated animal matter with the sargassum. Both the species that are normally associated with the sargassum, like the frogfish, vilefish, swimming crabs, seahorses, things like that, and the normally non-associated species that are just simply using it for cover temporarily. But yeah, the biomass of animals, especially in the nearshore environments, has been dramatically increased. Now, in the far offshore environments, like 5, 6, 7 miles offshore, finding the sargassum back in 2012 and 2013 was more challenging. Now, because there's a greater quantity of sargassum, in the years 2017 and 18, again, it was barren sargassum, and you'd occasionally find a creature. But it seems like in 2019 and 20, the volume of creatures, or should I say the proportion of creatures to sargassum, has increased proportionately with the volume of sargassum, which has made me ask a lot of questions of, do the longer life cycles of the animals and the fish, are they finally starting to catch up with the increased habitat and increased protection that the sargassum has offered them?
Yes, and these observations are all from like the Florida region, right?
Well, definitely in 2020, because COVID has kept me from traveling to the places that I normally go. Yeah, I haven't seen huge amounts of sargassum in the other regions because most of my 2019 and 2017 has been traveling throughout the South Pacific. So seeing the Caribbean sargassum, I haven't seen super increased volumes of it there, outside of the aerial views that I've seen in photographs on the internet. So sorry, I can really only offer insight about coastal Florida for 2020.
I mean, that's still amazing to
something you
have
just said
that
a second
insight.
ago.
Go ahead, Robbie.
Something
Yeah,
you said a minute ago made me laugh a little bit. I don't know if anybody noticed that or not, but you said offshore and said 5 to 6 miles. We call that coastal up here.
Oh, okay, sure.
To be offshore, you got to go way out there up here. I thought that was kind of funny and all. But, you know, we're talking about your imagery and stuff. I think to the scientific community, and I think what you're doing is important now, but I think in 20 or 30 years, your work's going to have a lot of historical significance because of the amount of sargassum stuff you've documented.
You've just torn into my worst fear.
Yeah, I thought I might be.
Every time you get into a topic about scuba, especially with someone that's in their 50s or 60s or 70s, the conversation always turns to, well, you know, your local reef that you live on here in Lauderdale by the Sea, you should have seen it in my days. And that breaks my heart, of course. And I dedicate a large part of my career to doing what little I can to make sure it doesn't get any worse. But my single worst fear as a wildlife photographer is that someday all my imagery will be used as historical record. Now, you're talking more about the influx of sargassum. I'm talking more about the predators that are being fished out, the larger animals, the lack of diversity that's been increasing in past years, and especially the lack of large creatures in the ocean since we've fished so many of them out at this point. It's scary to me to think that, you know, my photos might be included in a database of what 2010, 2005, 2015, and 2021 used to be like. You know, no more corals, no more gorgonians. These are nightmares of mine. How sargassum is going to be 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, well, you guys have much better insight on that than I do. But if current trends continue, will sargassum growth become exponential? These are questions I ask people like you all the time.
Well, we don't know the answers. We have no idea.
We don't know.
Yeah, but we're trying to learn though.
Yeah.
And we learn by observation, and we learn by experimentation, and we look at the historical record of similar things, and we try to put a puzzle together when we don't have all the pieces, you know, and every new piece we find makes it easier for us to see the big picture, and that's why there's so many different kinds of scientists and lay people that are certainly, you know, in my research is, you know, I rely heavily on lay people, and because it's important, and communicating to lay people is in this communication between scientists and lay people are just probably the single most important thing that anyone can do to deal with a lot of these issues that we have going on today. Is this clear communication between all stakeholder groups.
Yes.
And you know, what you're saying right there, it reminds me of sort of something that's become sort of a pet peeve of mine, but I shouldn't look at it negatively. I should look at it as an opportunity to explain sargassum to people. As I end up in coastal Florida homes a lot, especially the high rises with, you know, the installation of my art. And when I'm there, we get to have conversations about their backyard. And living on the beach in one of these high rises in Fort Lauderdale has given me great insight as to what the general public thinks about sargassum. And it's really blown my mind what I've learned from people's observations. And it's not their fault. They're attorneys and doctors and bankers, and they don't focus on the marine environment, but it is their backyard. And when they see in the summertime the huge rolling mats of seaweed and a 3-foot pile of it on their beach, where all they think about is, well, I come down as a snowbird to Florida and I'm going to be sitting here for, 3 months and I want my beach to be clean. And they don't know about or care about what it is. And they don't understand that it's a plant. They don't understand that it has an ecosystem in it. They also have multiple times have I heard the comment of, wow, the red tide is really bad this year. Now, red tide on the east coast of Florida is almost a non-issue because the Gulf Stream moves the water and we just don't have that buildup here on the east coast of Florida. West coast, different issue. But I don't think a lot of scientists and researchers understand the public perspective of sargassum being confused with red tide. There is actually a huge percentage of people living in coastal Florida that assume it's all one and the same because they see the news reports of what it's doing to the Sarasota area and to the Panama City Beach area. And they assume that the sargassum is actually red tide. And it's a little disappointing, but at the same time, it gives us a great opportunity to explain and educate to people that they are completely different things. And then I get to defer to the scientists to ask questions like, is the causality of one increase the same as the causality of the increase of the other? These are the things that keep me up at 2 a.m.
So it really shows
actually-
that these people have like no knowledge about their backyard, like their natural backyard, and don't have much ecological knowledge about the area they live in. I know sargassum is a new thing to come in, so even if they had like ecological knowledge from like when they were kids, they would have to like learn about sargassum and find out about it. But it's really interesting that people don't take the time to learn about the things that are like changing in front of them.
Just grabbing a kid that's snorkeling right on the beach for the first time, completely uncomfortable, choking on the water coming through his snorkel, water pouring in through his mask fogging up all the time. And if I can just bring over one of those big clumps of sargassum and lower it down in the water a little bit and watch the frogfish pop out and show it to the little kid, to me, that's one of the best things I can do to at least get one more person in the start of understanding that there is something cool and there is something beautiful in there. And it's not just what their frumpy parents think is a mess to their beach.
Yeah. Well,
Because it is. It's fascinating.
Well, you're exposing people to magic when you do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like who amongst us as kids, like when we're walking through the woods as kids, didn't like flip over the rock and look for the pill bugs underneath, or, look for a little millipede underneath. I mean, come on, this is what we're supposed to do as kids. I want little kids to get involved and understand what these little creatures are and how cool they can be. I don't know. Maybe I'll just never grow up, and I don't know. Maybe I want to be that kid again. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's exactly the people we need. And I mean, these images, when a kid sees these photos that you take and they realize that they can actually go snorkeling on their backyard in Florida, but anywhere else in the world, and see this live. This is so powerful. And that's why I also hope that this will never become just a historical record, but rather a reminder of, hey, look at this photo and go out snorkeling and diving and look at it yourself live.
Yeah. And if we can get more people out there and involved in it, no one is ever going to protect or care to protect anything that they haven't seen or experienced themselves. And the more people I can get involved in it and see that there's beautiful stuff, the more people are going to be interested in not throwing their plastic bottle into the mix of the sargassum weed or something like that.
Yeah. And a big part of that is not that, but they don't. The only place to see it is on TV. Oh, it must be doing fine. I saw it on TV.
Yep.
And which is with kind of the inverse of that. But no, being able to touch things changes things. And so
another quick observation that I just thought of when I said the plastic bottle thing. I ask myself other questions. Again, I look at them from a very non-scientific standpoint, but I've seen an increased amount of plastic floating in with the sargassum. And the way the plastic has stayed floating in the oceans and circulating around in the gyres, it makes me ask myself, is the increased volume of sargassum of the past few years holding more plastic? Because it feels like I see more floating plastic in the past 2 years. Maybe it's just because we're throwing more plastic in the ocean. Maybe it's because the sargassum and its holding steady in the area has actually held more plastic in areas that it wouldn't have been held in years past. Just a question I've been asking myself. I don't know.
Well, I think it might be a little bit of both. We're certainly using more plastics than we ever have before.
Yeah.
And every piece of plastic that's ever been created still exists today. And so just that accumulation of that, you know, and so much of it, you know, you throw you can be in Santa Rosa Copan in the mountains of Honduras, throw a plastic bottle on the streets. Rain comes, it's going to wash into the river, and it's eventually going to wash into the Caribbean or Choluteca, and you know, or in the Pacific, you know, depending on which watershed you're in. So, you know, plastics are being used at an unmerciful rate, and they're accumulating as well because of not just stuff that people do close to the sea, but stuff people do many, many miles away from the sea. In Boone, North Carolina, that's where I went to school. It's in the Appalachian Mountains, the Appalachian State University. That's the headwaters of the New River. It flows north up into West Virginia. It becomes, around Charleston, becomes the canal, eventually flows into the Ohio and starts heading southwest, and then flows into the Mississippi. I can throw a plastic bottle into the headwaters of the New River and it'll end up in the Gulf of Mexico thousands of miles later. And people just don't think about things that way. You know, where does it go? Oh, it's not here anymore, but it goes someplace, and usually it's the oceans.
I mean, actually, the big plastic islands in the middle of the oceans, they have actually the same behavior as the sargassum. So I do believe that sargassum traps more of these macroplastics of the big ones. But we talked about this with John Millett in the happy hour last week. And he mentioned that in terms of microplastics, they don't see a difference between outside the Sargasso patch and inside the Sargasso patch. But I believe that the big things, I think sargassum does act as a collector somehow.
Yeah, the size plastics that I can observe with my eye.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Last question. Me? So I was wondering, if my kid wanted to become an underwater photographer, what would you recommend him? What would you tell him?
So that is the question that no parent ever actually wants to hear the answer to. I think I touched on it earlier. My only regret in life is not dropping out of college sooner than I did. What parent wants to hear that? To me, it's like I said before, I enjoy talking to the animals. And obviously we're not using English or Spanish or German. We're talking the language of not being a jerk. And that doesn't apply to people. I'm talking about animals. I believe that most animals view everything in life as food, a predator, or a mate. Now, I've had dolphins and manatees and turtles try, but we're not a mate. We're not food, regardless of what Jaws has taught our parents' generation. And so therefore we're a predator. And you can practice these skills on your pet dog and on the wildlife in your backyard. Being able to speak with the animals and show the animal that you're not a predator through very, very slow approaches. Everybody in scuba diving wants to see a turtle and rush right into the turtle and photograph it with their GoPro. How about instead taking a full 15 minutes and watching it go about its everyday life and approaching in a way that's not going to have it turn its shell to you? You can practice these same things with the birds in your backyard or an insect that's crawling around your yard. How do you get it to crawl onto your finger instead of run away from your finger? Every marine creature is the same way. So if kids want to be a successful marine photographer, start learning how animals react to us and what our impact on their lives are just by being in their ecosystem. We see underwater photographers act in very unethical ways some way, and I think it's very disappointing. It was more so back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s in the film days, but anything for the shot, well, I do anything for the shot at risk to me, but not at risk to the animal. So having this empathy towards the animal and understanding what their perspective of the world is the single thing that I think has helped my career the most in being able to capture meaningful photos of the animals, whether that's a thinking animal like a dolphin or a shark or a coral. It's still doing things for a reason, and understanding what those reasons are really what gets you ahead. And you don't have to practice those skills underwater. Use the squirrels in your backyard to start gaining an understanding. The technical aspects of photography, that's easy. Anybody can learn it online. Empathy
Very
towards
cool.
the animals and the marine environment, that takes time and practice.
I think her son's going to learn that from his mom.
I hope so, but now I know what to teach him. I learned from the experts here.
Excellent. Good. Well, look here. Thank you for your time today. We're going to stick around and chat about what we just learned. Thank you for being a most excellent teacher. Yeah, I look forward to meeting with you again, and thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, it has been so much fun talking to you guys. Thank you for doing what you do, bringing Sargassum into a little bit more attention of the public. I think it is absolutely necessary right now.
Thank you so much for your time and your insights. It was really, really interesting.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
How about that? That was fun.
Yes, it was so much fun.
Yeah. And yeah, so I was excited about that. You know, and the thing is, those kind of perspectives are, you know, so important to science, and you know, and it's we need more input like that to the scientific community, and especially from people that are so enthusiastic about wanting to document and understand these systems.
As scientists, like, we are supposed to be observing a lot and do lots of observations, but we kind of lost that because we write a proposal and then it gets funded and we have a few weeks or maybe a month in the field, and we just go and collect data straight away without even knowing what the ecosystem will look like, because we've never been there. And people like him have this ecological knowledge, like fishermen as well, because they actually spend every day in that ecosystem when it's around.
Well, if you're living in an ecosystem, you're learning about it. And even if you're not very bright, you're going to learn things about that ecosystem. Things that are important to, you know, to sustain your livelihood, your lifeways, and, you know, support your family and whatnot. And otherwise, you're going to die. And the success of these indigenous peoples, people like Boog and all that, they you know, that's a testament to the knowledge they're gathering. And so, you know, we should always consider that kind of knowledge a valuable resource.
I think it was also beautiful how he expressed that you don't need to go to the Caribbean and float into the Sargassum to actually care about nature. You can learn it in your backyard, whatever your backyard is, and to learn to have this empathy with animals and plants, and basically to understand the ecology around you. Like, he's lucky that he can live in Florida and have Sargassum in his backyard. But for us, for example, that we, as Francisca said, we might see it once per year when we go on a field campaign. It's a completely different story, but we can do these observations in our backyards. And also about the photos, I think we tend to forget how powerful images are until we see amazing, astonishing photographs like the ones he has in his gallery. And then when we see that, we get reminded of, okay, this is what is out there. This is what we need to protect. This is what we're fighting for, basically. And so I think his job is one of the most crucial ones in marine conservation and restoration. Without that, we would be lost, basically.
Nice. Well, is that it for the day then?
I guess
So-
that's it.
Yeah.
Another
Well, guys,
interview.
good to be hanging out with y'all again. And I guess we'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in today and learning with us from our guest about sargassum.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please consider supporting us financially by becoming a Patreon. For as little as $1 per month, you can support us and take part in an exclusive monthly Zoom happy hour for Patreons, where you can network with our podcast guests and other sargassum enthusiasts.
This podcast was produced by Marcel van der Kamp, and your hosts today were Robbie Tingham, Francisca Elmer, and Mar Fernandez. We will be back next week with another exciting guest.
Do you want to find out more about what our guest talked about today? Check our show notes for links to the documents and website. The music in this podcast is from the song Demo Pray by Drizzle Roadrunner, an artist from Roatan. You can listen to the full song at the end of this episode. If you enjoy his music, then please follow him on Spotify and YouTube, where you can find more of his music. But for now, here is Demo Pray by Drizzle Roadrunner.
Hey, brother, hear me now. Brother, dog. Now me understand. Now for them no want to see we get nothing. That's why them a pray and always front and star. Now for them no want to see we get nothing. That's why them a pray. Now for them a pray. Them a pray. Them a pray. Me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Yeah, man. Them a pray. Me no great success. Now for them a pray. Them a pray. Them a pray. Me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray. Me no great success. So me tell them yeah. Promises come and me no take that. Only if it come from Jah, I'll accept that. Now for them me put me trust in and give me setback. Yo, selector, we'll and pull up that. Tell some wicked that bad mind me no fear them. Anytime them cheat and chat, me no hear them. Me dash a few hard soap for the queer them. Me dash a few hard soap, tell them where them. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no reap success. So me tell them yeah. Yes, me know me have a lot of fake friends, but me never woulda thought me woulda have fake family. So me tell them straight, me no trust them. Me no trust you and me no trust him. Fake friend lost bad mind in a real life. Star me no rate that, star me no rate that. Me real for me woulda bust a million shot in a real life. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no great success. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no great success. So me tell them yeah. Oh, them a pray, me no great success. Screaming out loud. Me woulda tell them to go look alike, but them a hate and grudge and creep on mine. Them a move like Judas. Them a move like Judas. Plus, everybody have a life to live. So me give one rascal who a try judge me like them chit and chat. So what them want to say? Cause none of them out there nah feed. Now for them a pray. Them a pray me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray me no reap success. Now for them